Stand with me on a hill, a very long time ago. Not 100 years ago, not 1,000. Go back further than that, past everything you have a name for, more than 40,000 years into the dark behind us, and stand on a cold hill at the edge of a green valley and look. Down there, by the river, a small group of people is building a fire. They are short and thick and strong, and their breath hangs white in the freezing air. Across the valley, on the far ridge, another group is walking. Those ones are taller, thinner, quicker, moving light over the stones like they weigh nothing. And far away, on an island you cannot even see from here, across a warm and distant sea, there are people no taller than children, standing over a lizard the size of a horse. They are all human, every single one of them. And they are not the same. This is the thing we have forgotten, because the world we were born into has only ever shown us one kind of human face. But it was not always so. For most of the story of people, in fact, you were not alone. You could stand on a hill like this one and see, with your own two eyes, more than one kind of human being alive in the world at the same time. 5 kinds, maybe 6, different species, different bodies, different minds. Cousins so far apart that hundreds of thousands of years of separate history stood between you, and yet close enough that you could look across a valley into their fire and know, in your chest, without a single word, that over there is also a person. And then, one by one, they went out, like fires going dark, all across a huge night, until there was only one kind of human being left in the entire world: us. This is the story of what happened to the others. And I want to warn you at the start, it is not the story you think it is. It is stranger than that, and sadder, and far more uncomfortable than any simple tale of a hero and a monster, a winner and a loser. To tell it honestly, I'm going to take you down off this hill, down to that fire by the river, down to one of those short, strong people breathing white smoke into the cold. Because the biggest questions in the history of our kind are always easier to feel when they belong to someone with a face. So, let's give them to him. His people left no writing. They carved no names into stone that we could ever read. So, we are going to have to give him one, and I'll call him Rook, after the big dark bird that watches the cold fields and misses nothing. It is not his real name. He had a real one, surely. A sound the others made when they wanted him to come, or to be still, or to look. That sound is gone. That is the very first thing to understand about these people. Almost everything they ever were is gone, and the little we still have, we had to dig it out of the frozen ground and read it out of blood. But we will not start with what was lost. We will start with him alive. Rook is a Neanderthal. Say that word slowly, because you were taught to hear it wrong. When people throw it as an insult, they mean stupid, brutish. A shuffling half-animal with a club. Throw that picture away right now. It is not only unkind, it is simply false. Rook's brain is as large as yours. In some of his people, it is even larger. His hands can do things your soft hands could never do. He has never seen a city, never seen a wheel, never planted a seed in his life, and he is not primitive. He is a person, whole and complete, living inside a world so hard and so cold that almost none of us would last a single winter out here beside him. Watch him work. He is sitting by the fire with a lump of flint in his lap, and he is not just banging rocks together. He turns the stone in his hand, reading it, feeling for the grain of it the way you might read a face. Then he strikes, at exactly the right angle, and a thin flake falls away with an edge sharper than steel. Strike again. Again. He is not guessing. He learned this over years, from hands that learned it from other hands, going back and back through a chain of teaching so long it makes the pyramids look like they were built yesterday. His people had been making tools this precise way for longer than our entire species has existed. Think about that. Rook is heir to a tradition of skill 400,000 years deep, and it is not only stone. Watch how he lives. When the hunt comes, Rook does not stand far off and fling a spear from safety. His body is not built for that. He is built like a wrestler, dense and powerful, and his way of hunting is terrifyingly close. He and the others move in together on the great deer, on the wild horse, on the huge, shaggy things that could break a man in half, and they drive their spears in from an arm's length away, holding on, taking the animal's fury into their own bodies. Look at the old scars on Rook's arms and ribs. Every Neanderthal who lived long enough carried a body like a rodeo rider's, broken and healed, broken and healed. This is not a gentle life. It asks everything of him. And still he chooses it, season after season, to bring meat back to the fire. Now, watch the thing that should stop you cold. There is an old man in Rook's band. His name sound is also gone, so picture him just as the old one, half blind, one arm withered and useless, most of his teeth gone from his head. In the picture, we were taught, this man is dead weight. In a brutal world, the weak get left behind. But that is not what happens here. The old one is fed. He is warmed. When the band moves, someone carries what he cannot. We know this is true, not because anyone wrote it down, but because we have found their skeletons. We have found Neanderthals who lived for years, with injuries so severe they could not possibly have fed themselves, could not have hunted, could not have survived a week alone. Which means that for years, other people chose to keep them alive. They cared for their sick. They carried their broken. In a world with every excuse to be cruel, they were not. And when someone died, they did not simply leave the body where it fell. Watch, on the worst day, a child of the band has died, and Rook and the others dig into the floor of the cave, and they lay the small body down with what looks, to our eyes across all that time, unbearably like tenderness, curled as if sleeping. Some of Rook's people scattered color on their dead, or laid them with the bones of animals, or with flowers, though we argue about the flowers to this day. What we cannot argue with is the digging and the laying down. They buried their dead. They understood, somehow, that a person was not a thing to be discarded, that a death was a wound in the whole band that had to be marked. They were people. I am going to say that many times before we are done, because everything that comes after depends on you believing it. They made tools that required planning and patience and years of teaching. They cared for their helpless. They buried their dead. There is a good chance they made music and marked their skin and told stories in the dark. And on a clear, cold night, Rook does the thing you did last week without thinking. He looks up at the stars. We will never know what he thought they were, but he looked. A person always looks. I want to add one more thread to Rook before we go on, because it matters later, and because it is true. Rook's grandmother did not come from his people at all. She came from far to the east, from another kind of human again, cousins of his people who lived out across the cold heart of Asia. We only know these eastern cousins exist because of a single finger bone and a tooth found in a cave in Siberia that turned out to belong to no species we had ever named. We call them the denisovans, after the cave. We have almost nothing of them but their DNA. And yet here they are, already, in Rook's own blood. Because long before Rook was born, his people and those eastern cousins had met and touched and had children together. Rook does not know any of this. He only knows his grandmother's songs were a little strange, and her stories came from somewhere the others had never walked. Hold on to that. The web was already tangled long before our story begins. So that is Rook. Strong, skilled, loving, grieving, wondering. A person in a world full of his people, at the top of a life that has gone on, more or less like this, for 400,000 years. And now, the world begins to change. It starts with the cold. It always started with the cold in Rook's world. The weather in his time did not sit still and behave. It lurched. Warm centuries, and then, without warning, a plunge into deeper freezing, ice pushing down from the north, the forests he knew thinning into hard open plains. The animals he hunted followed the food, or died, or moved past the edge of the land his band knew how to walk. And a band like Rook's is not large. His whole world is a few dozen faces. When the deer grow thin and the winters grow long, there is no cushion, no store, no one far away to send help. There is only the fire and the hunt, and the hope that this hard year is not the start of a run of hard years. Rook has seen hard years before. His people have always come through them. That is not what frightens him. What frightens him is the tracks. One gray morning, at the muddy edge of the river, Rook crouches over a footprint that is not one of his. It is narrower than his people's prints, longer, The stride between them is strange, stretched out, as if whoever made them barely touched the ground. Rook has walked this valley his whole life. He knows every band within many days' walk. He knows their feet. And this is no one he knows. He stands and he looks across the valley, and far off on the high ridge, thin against the pale sky, there is a figure, upright. Watching, maybe, the way he is watching. Then it is gone. That is the moment the world tips. Rook does not have the words for it, but you and I do. The newcomers have arrived. They came over many long generations, out of the warm south, out of Africa, walking and settling and walking again, until at last some of them came up into Rook's cold country. They are human, like him, but they are a different kind. Taller, lighter. Their faces are flatter and smaller than his heavy-browed people's, and they carry inside them a set of gifts that Rook's people, for all their 400,000 years, do not have. Over the seasons that follow, Rook is going to learn what those gifts are, one at a time, and each lesson is going to cost him something. Here is the first lesson. Late in a lean autumn, hidden in the brush, Rook watches a group of the newcomers hunt, and what he sees does not make sense to him. There is a deer out in the open, far off, much too far. Among his people, that deer is safe. You cannot close that distance without the animal bolting. But one of the newcomers lifts a strange stick, a thing with a hook on the end, and fits a light spear to it, and throws, and the spear leaps out across the whole impossible distance and takes the deer down where it stands. Rook has never seen anything like it. His people kill up close, with their whole bodies, at terrible risk. These newcomers have found a way to reach out and kill from far away, safe, again and again. It is not that they are braver than Rook. In a way, they no longer need to be. Later, some of them will have bows, and the reach will grow longer still. But even now, watching that single throw, Rook understands something in his gut that he cannot say out loud. The newcomers can feed themselves in this hard country more easily than his people can. And in a lean year, in a valley where there is only so much meat walking around, that difference is everything. Here is the second lesson, and it is quieter, and in the end, it may matter more. One of the newcomers, an old woman, drops something as her group moves on, and Rook creeps down later and picks it up out of the mud. It is a small shell, worn smooth, with a hole bored through it so it can hang on a cord. Rook turns it over and over. He knows this kind of shell. It comes from the sea, and the sea is many, many days' walk from this valley. Farther than his whole band has ever traveled, farther than his grandmother's grandmother ever walked. How did a shell from the far sea end up in the mud of this river? The answer is the second gift, and Rook cannot see it, but you can. The newcomers are connected. Their world is not just the few dozen faces around their own fire. They trade. They pass shells and colored stone and news and stories, hand to hand across enormous distances, band to band to band, in a vast net of relationships that stretches for hundreds of miles in every direction. Rook's people are not like that. Rook's world is small and close and deep, but it ends at the edge of what he can walk. The newcomer's world is thin and wide and open, and it never really ends at all. And that net is not just for shells, it is for surviving. When the newcomers hit a terrible winter, when their own valley fails, they are not alone the way Rook is alone. They have friends 4 valleys away. They know where the food is across a huge region because news travels the net. They can move toward help or call help toward them. When Rook's band hits a terrible winter, there is no net. There is only Rook and his few dozen faces and the cold. You are watching, right now, the thing scientists call competitive exclusion. And it is the least dramatic and most deadly idea in this whole story. It is this: when two kinds of creature want the same food in the same land at the same time, and one of them is even a little bit better at getting it, then across enough years, the better one slowly, quietly squeezes the other one out. Not in a battle, not in a single terrible day, just meal by meal, winter by winter, empty-handed hunt by empty-handed hunt. The newcomers do not have to hate Rook. They do not have to raise a hand against him. They only have to be a little bit better at staying fed in the same valley for long enough, and the mathematics of hunger will do the rest. And then comes the third lesson, and it is the cruelest, because Rook never even sees the weapon that fires it. It begins with a cough. Rook's youngest, a boy of 5 winters, starts to cough one night by the fire. Nothing strange in that. At first, children cough. But this cough does not clear. It sinks. It turns to fever, and then to a rattling in the small chest that Rook has never heard before, in a life full of every ordinary sickness his people know. Rook does everything his people know how to do. It is not enough. Nothing his people know is enough, because this is not a sickness his people know. In a handful of days, the boy is gone, and then the boy's mother is coughing, and then the old one, and the fire that used to have 20 faces around it has 15? Where did it come from? Rook will die never knowing. But you can know. It came in on the breath of the newcomers. Think about the newcomers' long journey up out of the warm south, through crowded lands, alongside their animals, over thousands and thousands of years. Along that journey, they met 1,000 sicknesses, and the ones who survived passed down bodies that had learned to fight those sicknesses. The newcomers carry those old enemies inside them now, carry them lightly, half the time barely feeling them. But Rook's people have been up here in the cold, apart, for hundreds of thousands of years. They never met these sicknesses. Their bodies never learned the fight. And so a newcomer does not have to lift a spear to be carrying death into Rook's valley. He only has to breathe near the river where Rook later drinks. We have watched this exact horror happen in times close enough to write down. When people who had been long apart came back into contact, again and again, it was not the weapons that emptied the land first. It was the illnesses, racing ahead of every army, through people who had no defense against them, killing more than any battle ever could. And here is the part that should chill you most. A spear leaves a mark on a bone. A battle leaves a scar we can find and read 40,000 years later. But the boy who dies coughing leaves a skeleton that looks exactly like a boy who died of old age. Disease is the killer that erases its own fingerprints. It may have done more than anything else in this story to empty Rook's world, and it left us almost nothing to find. We only worked out that it must have happened by thinking it through, the way you just did. So now, stand back with me and look at Rook's whole world, not just his one fire. It is not one disaster. That is the thing I need you to feel. There is no single villain riding into the valley. Instead, there are many pressures, all at once, all leaning the same way. The climate lurching and starving the land. The newcomers, feeding themselves more easily with their far-reaching weapons. The newcomers' vast net of friends and shells and news, carrying them through the lean years that break Rook's small band. And the silent sicknesses, moving invisibly through Rook's people, who have no shield. Any one of these, Rook's people might have survived. They had survived hard times for 400,000 years. But all of them together, leaning and leaning, year after year, generation after generation, across a whole continent. And so the fires begin to go out. Not Rook's fire, not yet, but others. A band 2 valleys over that Rook's people used to meet each spring simply is not there one year. Their cave is cold. Then another. Then another. Across the whole huge land, from the western cliffs to the eastern plains, the map of Rook's people is quietly going dark, one fire at a time, and the newcomers' fires are lighting where the old ones went out. I want to be honest with you here, more honest than the simple story allows, because you deserve the truth and not the comfortable version. Did it ever come to blood? Did a Neanderthal and a newcomer ever stand face to face with weapons up? Almost certainly, sometimes, yes. When 2 kinds of hungry people want the same valley, there will be days it turns to violence. We have found Neanderthal bones with wounds in them, and some of those wounds might have come from a newcomer's weapon. But here is where I have to be careful with you, because this is where the simple story wants to take over and shout. There is no evidence, none, of a great war. No mass grave of Neanderthals cut down by newcomers. No sign of an army, a campaign, a planned wiping out. What we see instead is much smaller and much sadder. Maybe a fight over a carcass. Maybe an ambush at a river. Maybe stretches of years where the 2 kinds simply avoided each other's eyes across the valley and let each other be. The killing in this story, where it happened at all, was not an organized extermination. It was scattered and human and grim the way killing between people has always been. It was one thread among many, and probably not even the strongest one. Because here is the fact that breaks the simple story completely. Here is the thing that no tale of pure war can survive. Rook and the newcomers did not only fight, they did not only avoid each other. Sometimes they loved each other. I know how strange that sounds after everything I have just told you, but it is not a guess, and it is not a nice thing I made up to soften the ending. It is written, right now, inside your own body. If your family's roots lie anywhere outside of Africa, then between 1 and 4% of all your DNA, the very instructions that built you, is Neanderthal. Not a rumor, not a trace only a machine could find. A real, working piece of Rook's people, carried in your cells, put there because at some point a Neanderthal and a newcomer had a child, and that child lived and had children, and their line ran unbroken all the way down the ages to you. It happened more than once. It happened in more than one place. Whatever else passed between these two kinds of human, sometimes, across the fear and the strangeness, they reached for each other and made a life. So let me show you how it happens for Rook. Because his change, the turn of his whole story, begins right here. It is deep winter, the worst Rook has ever known. His band is down to a handful now, and into the mouth of his cave, out of a killing blizzard, stumbles a stranger. One of the newcomers. A young woman, alone, cut off from her group, half frozen, one leg torn, and going bad. By every hard rule of survival, she is nothing to Rook. She is one of them, the ones taking the valley, the ones whose breath carries death. The cold, simple thing to do is to drive her back out into the storm and let the winter take her. And Rook stands over her in the firelight, and he does not do it. Because Rook is one of the people who feed the old and carry the broken. That is not a habit he can switch off, because the broken one has the wrong face. Everything in him that kept the withered old man alive for years, everything in his people that made them dig graves and grieve, all of it is looking down at this shivering stranger, and it will not let him turn away. He kneels, he cleans the leg, he puts food to her mouth, he gives her his own place by the fire. We will call her Wren, small and quick and far-traveled, like the little bird. And over the long, dark weeks, while her leg heals, Rook and Wren, who cannot share a single word of language, begin to understand each other anyway, in the oldest ways people have. She watches him nap a flint edge finer than anything her people make, and her eyes go wide. He watches her fit a light dart to that strange throwing stick, and understands at last, up close, the gift that had been beating his people. She grieves, he sees, over the group she was torn from, the same grief he carries for the fires gone dark. She laughs, once, at something, and it is a completely human laugh. And on a clear cold night, he sees her step outside and tip her head back and look up at the same stars he has looked at his whole life and wonder at them, the way he does. And something turns over in Rook, something that is the real heart of this whole story. He had thought the line between his people and the newcomers was the most important line in the world. Us and them. The ones who belong and the ones who take. But here in the firelight is one of them, and she cares for her dead, and she laughs, and she looks at the stars, and she is afraid, and she is kind when she is shown kindness. The line he thought was a wall turns out to be almost nothing at all. She is not a different thing from him. She is a different kind of the same thing. She is a person, exactly and completely, just like him. And in the same breath, Rook understands the harder truth, the one he has been running from all these years. His people are not coming back. He has watched the fires go out, one by one, all across the land. No fight he could win, no hunt he could make, no wish he could wish is going to refill those cold caves. His kind, the kind that has walked this country for 400,000 years, is ending. That is simply true, and no anger will change it. So, what is left? What does a person do, standing at the very end of his own kind, with a stranger by his fire who turned out to be family? Here is Rook's answer, and it is the change that his whole story was walking toward. He stops trying to win. He starts trying to pass it on. He and Wren stay together. When her leg is healed and the spring comes, she does not leave, or she leaves and comes back, and in time there is a child. A child who is both of them, heavy-browed like Rook's people, but lighter and quicker like Wren's. A child who is, in his single small body, the joining of two kinds of human that spent hundreds of thousands of years apart. We will call him ash because ash is what the fire leaves behind, the thing that remains and stays warm long after the flames are gone. I have to be honest with you about ash, too, the way the truth demands. We do not know how a child like ash was seen. We can read in your blood that such children were born and lived and had children of their own. But blood does not record whether the band welcomed him or feared him, whether he stood a little apart his whole life, caught between two worlds, or whether he was simply loved and that was that. The bones and the stones are silent on the things that matter most, the things that happen inside a family and inside a heart. All we know for certain is the one enormous fact. He lived. The line went on. Whatever the cost to the boy caught in the middle of it, the two rivers joined in him, and the joined river kept flowing. And Rook, who once measured his life in deer brought down and winters survived, now measures it in what he can pour into ash before the end. Watch him in these last years. He is teaching. Everything his 400,000-year people ever learned, he is trying to fit into one growing boy. He guides Ash's small hands on the flint. Strike here, feel the grain, again, until the boy can pull an edge from a stone the way Rook can. He teaches him the animals, their tracks, their habits, the close and dangerous dance of the hunt. He teaches him to bank a fire so it lives through the coldest night. He teaches him, without a word for it, the thing that mattered most about his people, that you feed the old one, you carry the broken one, you do not leave a person behind. And on clear nights, he takes the boy outside and points up, and the two of them, the old dying kind and the new joined kind, look at the stars together. He is not saving his people. He knows he cannot save his people. He is doing the only thing left that a person can do at the end of everything. He is making sure that what his people knew and what his people were does not vanish completely into the dark. He is handing the fire forward into hands that will carry it on after his are cold. And out beyond Rook's Valley, in these same years, the same ending is happening to all the others. This is the wider truth I promised you on the hill, and I will not leave it out just because it aches. Far to the east, the Denisovans, Rook's grandmother's people, the cousins we know from little more than a finger bone, are fading out of their vast Asian country the same way. And they too, before they go, reach across and mix with the newcomers and leave their own gift behind in the blood of the living. To this day, the people of the high Tibetan mountains carry a piece of Denisovan DNA that lets them breathe easy in thin air that would leave the rest of us gasping. Think of that. Every time a person runs, strong and clear-headed, high up where the air is thin and cold, they are running, a little, on the body of a vanished kind of human who gave them that gift and then disappeared. And far to the south, on that island across the warm sea, the tiny people, the ones no bigger than children, the ones we nicknamed the hobbits after the small folk in a story, they are going too. They had lived on their island for hundreds of thousands of years, hunting their giant lizards and their dwarf elephants in their own small, strange world. The newcomers reach the region around the time the little people vanish. Maybe the newcomers did it, by hunger or by sickness, the way it happened to Rook. Maybe their island simply failed them, a mountain waking up, a world too small to survive a single disaster. On an island, a whole people can be balanced on a knife's edge, and it does not take much to push them off. We honestly do not know. That is the truest thing I can tell you about the little people. They were here for an unimaginably long time, and then, right around when we arrived, they were not, and we cannot say for certain why. There may have been others too, other cousins in other corners of the world that we have not even found yet. One by one, all across the huge night of the world, the other fires are going out. And only two kinds of thing walk on out of that darkness into the morning. The newcomers and the children, like Ash, who carry a piece of the others folded quietly inside them. Now come back to Rook, because it is nearly time. He is old now, older than the strong hunter you met by the fire so long ago. His body, which took the fury of great animals for a lifetime, is worn down to almost nothing. His hands shake on the flint, and when he looks around his fire, he sees how few faces are left. He may be, by now, one of the very last of his kind for many, many days' walk in any direction. Somewhere out there, a handful of others like him may still be breathing by their own small fires, growing older, growing fewer. But Rook's world has shrunk back down to almost nothing. the way it began, a single fire in a huge, cold land. And here is where I bring you to the picture that started this whole search. The picture that made someone long ago first ask the terrible question. Picture one of the very last Neanderthals, an old one, sitting by a fire in a cave in the country we now call France. He has spent his life caring for the people around him, and now he sits, looking out of the cave mouth at a world that is passing away, a world that will soon hold nothing recognizably like him at all. That is Rook on his last nights. Not screaming, not fighting. Just an old person by a fire who cared for his own, looking out at the dark. But Rook does not look out at nothing. He looks out and sees Ash. Ash is grown now, a man, with children of his own gathered around a fire a little way off, their faces a blend of two vanished and surviving worlds. And Ash can nap a flint the way Rook's people did, and Ash knows the tracks and the hunt. And Ash banks his fire against the cold the way he was taught. And when one of Ash's own children falls and cries, Ash goes to the child and gathers it up and does not leave it behind, because that is what he learned from the old man by the other fire. The fire that Rook lit is still burning. It has just moved to a younger hand. And then, on some night we will never date and never find, the old fire goes out, Rook dies. And with him, or soon after him, in cave after cave across the whole wide land, the last of his people die too. 400,000 years of a particular kind of human being, a particular kind of mind, a particular way of feeling the weight of a spear and the grief of a death and the pull of the stars comes to an end. And the specific thing it was like to be them, to be inside that body, in that cold, with those bonds, looking out at that lost world is gone, truly gone. No bone we dig up, no strand of DNA we read, no clever machine we ever build will bring back what it felt like to be Rook. That door is closed, and it does not open again. They did not die in one great slaughter. I need you to carry that out of this story, because it is the truth, and the truth matters more than a good scary tale. They died of 1,000 quiet losses, of a climate that would not sit still, of hunger as others fed a little more easily in the same valleys, of sicknesses they could not see and could not fight, of small bands with no vast net to catch them when they fell, of the occasional, scattered violence that has always flickered between hungry people. And, strangest of all, in part, they did not die but dissolved, folding themselves into the very people who were replacing them, until their edges blurred and their blood ran on inside another kind. Did we kill them? After everything, that is still the question. And I owe you the most honest answer the evidence allows. And the honest answer is yes, in some ways, in some places, at some times. And no, not the way the simple story means it. We did not march out and wipe them from the earth in a war. We outfed them and outconnected them and carried sicknesses into them, and here and there we fought them, and now and then we loved them. And over thousands of years, across a whole world, the sum of all of that was the same everywhere. They disappeared, and we remained. Now, let me bring you all the way home, all the way back up the long tunnel of time, 40,000 years, past every fire that ever went dark, back into your own body, sitting where you are sitting now. Ash's line did not stop. It ran on, child after child after child, through more years than the mind can hold, through every people and every migration and every age, and somewhere along that endless chain, it reached you. That small piece of Rook, 1 to 4%, that working handful of his people's instructions, is not a museum piece. It is doing things inside you right now. Scientists have found that some of the pieces the Neanderthals gave us help run our immune systems, shape how our bodies handle their fuel, help us live in the places we live. Rook's people did not just leave a stain in our blood, they left tools in it. In the very act of replacing them, we absorbed something useful, something of them, and we have been carrying it and using it every day since. That is their monument, not a statue, not a written name. There is no grave you can visit, no word of their language you can speak. The only monument Rook's people have is the living piece of them inside the bodies of the people who remained. You are it. When your body fights off an illness this winter, some ancient part of that fight may be a gift from a people who have been gone for 40,000 years. When someone breathes easy on a high, cold mountain, that ease may be the last gift of the Eastern cousins, handed down out of a cave in Siberia. The others are not entirely absent. They are quiet and they are folded deep, but they are here. They are in the room. And so we come to the hardest part, the part the science cannot help us with at all, and I will not pretend that it can. The science can tell you, as well as anyone can, what probably happened. It cannot tell you how to feel about it. It cannot tell you whether to carry your small piece of rook with pride, or with grief, or with a kind of guilt, or with all three at once. It cannot tell you whether Rook, if he could somehow see you now, would look at the trace of his people living on inside you and call it a beautiful thing, a way of not being wholly lost, or whether he would call it the final theft, the swallowing of his people into the very ones who took their world. That question is not for the scientists. It may not be for anyone. It may simply be too big and too old for us to answer honestly. But there is one thing I know, and I will leave you with it. For most of the story of people, we were not alone. There were other minds, other kinds of human, other ways of looking up at the same stars and wondering the same wonder. And now there is one. That is not the only world that could have existed. For 500,000 years, it was not the world that did exist. We are the ones who walked out of that huge, crowded night into a strange new morning, where being human means only one thing, because we are the ones who were left. The other humans are gone. We are here. We carry a small piece of them in our blood, and it is the only thing they have left. And the fire that an old man lit in a cold cave and fed all his life and handed on at the very end into younger hands rather than let it die, that fire did not go out. Look inside yourself. It is still burning. It is you.